to that today. But just go one level below that. One level a little deeper and a little lower down the campaign. I want to take this one other snapshot of how the Trump side is behaving, how they are trying to win the presidency. And that starts in a very specific geographic place. It starts in downtown Washington, D.C. There's a place you have definitely heard of, right there at the center of the map there, called the National Press Club. Go to the left there, you see it's very close to the White House. Over to the right there, that's Ford's Theater. That's where Lincoln was shot. It's right in downtown D.C. Incidentally, I marked that TJ Maxx on the map because I once bought 3 umbrellas for less than $20 there when Susan and I got caught in a downpour. I was so grateful I bought an extra umbrella even though there were only 2 of us. It's a very convenient location. Lots of foot traffic right in the middle of everything in D.C., the National Press Club. Last Friday, National Press Club was due to host a press conference. It was not a particularly mainstream thing, but it was a provocative enough thing that they were pretty much guaranteed a lot of reporters showing up. And in fact, that press conference planned there for last Friday, it was provocative enough that apparently it got to be a little too hot for the National Press Club to handle. And so the organizers announced, after billing this thing as their National Press Club press conference, they eventually announced, actually, it won't be there after all. They sort of canceled it at the last minute. But then there was this weird exchange of information that was kind of hard to pin down. Ultimately, the organizers said it was National Press Club. No, it's not. The whole thing's off. Then they said it was back on, except now it wouldn't be at the National Press Club. It would be somewhere else in the neighborhood. And they wouldn't say where. It's not standard for a press conference, right? Reporters who still wanted to go, get this, were instructed to go stand outside the entrance to this restaurant and look for a man wearing a brown tie with a dark gray suit. And if they were able to find that man would tell the reporters one by one in person, not online, not in writing, he would tell them one by one in person where they could go to find this now secret press conference. And it turned out to be a windowless basement conference room of a hotel nearby the National Press Club. And in that windowless basement conference room, we finally got to hear from the leading lowlights of the white supremacist movement in the United States. This was last Friday. They held this cloak and dagger press conference explaining that despite their new high profile in this country, thanks to this year's presidential contest, they still feel that they're misunderstood. And in particular, they want to be clear that no matter what you've heard about them, no matter what term you want to call them, no matter what umbrella term you might want to apply to their movement, they want to be clear, especially now that they're getting all this attention. They want to set the record straight. They want you to know that they are racist. They want you to not downplay the race part. It was amazing. They got up to explain, like, there's all this diversity among us white supremacists, but at core, we are one thing. We are white pride, white power. That's what we all agree on. You cannot separate us from racism. We are racists. Don't forget, don't misunderstand us. That's their core belief.
Egalitarian orthodoxy in which the alt-right is in unanimity about rejecting, and rejects probably with the most enthusiasm, is the idea that the races are basically equivalent and interchangeable. East Asians have the highest IQs at about an average of 102, 103. Next come whites at about 100. Next come Hispanics, which is a very varied population, hard to put a firm figure on them. And then blacks at an average IQ of about 85. Now, the evidence is absolutely overwhelming that there is a substantial genetic contribution to these differences, whether we like it or not.
Which is probably the most radical of any of the 3 of us here. Is he just simply wants a white homeland, a white identity?
Don't get us wrong. We believe a lot of things, but we all believe in the genetic superiority of certain races, and we want a white homeland. Don't misunderstand us. We're so misunderstood. The reason these guys were out there last week clarifying these matters, crowing in this downtown D.C. hotel ballroom about what they think is inferior about black people and Latinos and why white people need to segregate themselves and live alone and the United States needs to become an all-white country. The reason these guys feel like they can come out of the woods a little bit, they no longer have to just meet around the burning cross in the dark anymore. The reason they feel like now it's time to show up in hotel ballrooms in D.C. and invite reporters to listen to their eugenics insanity is because basically they're making it right now for the first time in their little racist lifetimes. I mean, their ideas about race, their ideas about Jews, they feel like they are finally getting the mainstream support and attention and respect they have always wanted. They feel like they're turning up in mainstream politics. They feel like this is their moment. And it's because they finally got a very mainstream champion.
Certainly, we have been, you could say, riding his coattails. There's been more interest in us because we are generally pro-Trump, because we were inspired by him and things like that. The fact that Trump, from day one, defined his campaign in terms of immigration, I think that was key.
Trump implicitly, not explicitly, but implicitly, is countering it because he's appealing to white America.
I think it's really about Trump's style, the fact that he doesn't back down, the fact that he's willing to confront his enemies, mostly on the left. There's something about him, there's something high energy that is infectious, that you look at that and you think, this is what a leader looks like.
So all the nationally known leaders of America's white supremacist movement held this press conference in D.C. to declare how much they support and are inspired by Donald Trump and how much they like about him and how much his campaign speaks to them. And that sort of sends a shiver down your spine for a specific reason. I mean, a candidate is, of course, not responsible for all of his or her supporters, but this press conference that they held in D.C. was billed with the headline, "What is the alt-right?" The Trump campaign CEO, Steve Bannon, he comes from a website. He ran the website that calls itself, quote, the platform for the alt-right. He calls it that himself. That's a direct quote from him. We're the platform for the alt-right. That's the alt-right. And the one nice thing about this, in terms of getting a snapshot of where we are as a country, is that when rabid white supremacists and anti-Semites stop just meeting in the woods and, accidentally setting their sheets on fire, when they come out of their hidey holes to brag about how they feel like they've got a real leader in Donald Trump, they also end up explaining some of what's going on inside that campaign that otherwise doesn't really make sense. They end up explaining something that shows how the Trump campaign is still, even now, blowing itself up. It's an odd source of comfort, but it might be one, and that's next.